History tells the story of the world and of our lives. Sometimes that history goes bump in the night. Broadcasting from the center of oddity and the supernatural in Central Florida, it's the History Goes Bump podcast.
Hello, you spectacular people. Welcome to History Goes Bump Redux. I am your host, Diane.
And this is Kelly.
Kelly, on this episode, we're going back to the Landers Theater in Springfield, Missouri. And when we did this show about 10 years ago, it wasn't a very long one. And I wanted to fill this out a little bit more. So we're going to talk about some other haunted locations in haunted Springfield as well.
Excellent.
Are you ready to go back?
I'm ready. Springfield, Missouri will soon be celebrating its 200th anniversary. We've covered the haunted Pythian Castle that is here, and back in 2015, we also featured the Landers Theater. This is a typical theater, meaning it has ghosts. There's just something about the emotions that are displayed on stage and evoked in the audience that causes unexplained activity. Landers has stood for decades and seen much history. Famous performers took to the stage, including Lillian and Chaney. When motion pictures became the thing, the theater adapted. Turns out there are other haunted locations in the city as well. Join us as we explore the history and hauntings of the Landers Theater and the city of Springfield, Missouri.
The state of Missouri became a part of the United States initially through the Louisiana Purchase of 1803. For many years, it was just a territory, but in 1821, Missouri officially became a state. The area that is today the city of Springfield was originally populated by the Kickapoo, Osage, and Delaware Native American tribes. John Polk Campbell was credited with the founding of Springfield when he and his brother carved their initials in a tree in 1829. They had traveled to the Ozarks to find a new place for their families to live. Campbell not only built one of the first settlements here in a field near a spring, but he made the push to have the county named Greene, and that's with an E at the end, after American Revolutionary General Nathaniel Greene. And our astute listeners probably already put the spring and field together to get the official name of the city. So now you know where it comes from. He sees a spring, he sees a field, this is a good place to build, I'm going to mark the tree with my name. And why don't we just call the city that, Springfield? In 1838, the city was officially incorporated.
The Old Wire Road travels through Springfield, and it is on this road that the Cherokee passed through while on the Trail of Tears. The road was named Wire Road because it was along this route that the first telegraph line in the area was built. The road was an integral part of the Civil War, and portions of it still exist today. It was after the war that Springfield became part of the Wild West. The town square had its first shootout in 1865. The man who won the gunfight would go on to fame as Wild Bill Hickok. Springfield is also where the birth of Route 66 occurred. Traces of that famous route are still part of Springfield. In 1891, the Baldwin Theater was built here.
The Baldwin Theater was named for a man who owned a stove factory in town and pushed for the building of the theater in the city. It was a rival to the already flourishing Grand Theater. That theater burned down in 1895. The Baldwin would suffer the same fate in 1909 when a fire started in the boiler room and spread quickly. The town needed a new theater, and plans for the building of Landers Theater were begun. The Bowler Brothers architectural firm of Missouri was hired to design the new theater by John and D.J. Landers and R.W. Seward in 1909 at a cost of $100,000. The style was that of the neoclassical found in France. This style is influenced by ancient Greece, and the French movement was expressed in what they called the Louis XVI style. The theater was framed in wood, and it is thought that the reason for this was because one of the builders owned a lumber company. Missouri limestone piers were installed in the front of the building, and the coins, cornices, cartouches, and parapet were made from terracotta. The rest of the structure is made from brick.
A large stage was built so that live performances could run at the theater. The design around the stage was ornate, and electric lights were installed. Plush seats made theatergoers comfortable, and the first production they would watch would be The Golden Girl, starring Lillian Russell. It debuted on September 18, 1909, and the Missouri Republican wrote of the event, "Under the tempered glow and radiance of 2,000 electric lights which shed their beams, rivaling the brilliance of a midday sun in ocean mist, or the witching haze of a dreamy Indian Ozark summer, the devotees of fashion and pleasure, and of material progress met and mingled last night at the opening of the Landers Theater, a commodious and beautiful temple of amusement, the perfect appointments of which brought a flush of admiration and of pride to the cheek and a gleam of pleasure to the eye of those who greeted the Golden Girl, and witnessed the initial offering of the playhouse which came to Springfield as a heritage of fire."
Can you imagine them writing reviews for plays or movies like this today? They don't do this kind of flowery language.
They do not, and a lot of times the writing is scathing.
Landers was part of the Orpheum Circuit of theaters. This was a chain of movie and vaudeville theaters that would eventually become part of the RKO Corporation. The O in that stands for Orpheum, which was derived from the Greek mythological figure Orpheus, who was said to be a bard and musician. Famous performers not only included Lillian Russell, but there was also John Philip Sousa, George Cohan, and the man of 1,000 faces, Lon Chaney. The film The Birth of a Nation debuted in 1915 and was shown in the theater. This was a silent movie and the first 12-reel film in America. The movie has been controversial as it was used to recruit members of the KKK and is considered to be racist. Nevertheless, this was the beginning of Landers Theater being used as a movie theater rather than a stage for vaudeville and other performances. Gotta hate that that's the way it debuted its movie era. We're going to show this film.
Yeah.
Which I don't know that there's even a copy of it that still exists today. I can't remember.
In 1920, the theater suffered a fire. A boiler had exploded. There were coal bins under the stage, and they soon caught fire. Every fire truck in town came to the scene to prevent the entire block from being engulfed. Fireproofing precautions taken inside the theater, like the hanging of an asbestos curtain, helped to keep the fire contained and kept the theater from being a total loss. Within 5 months, the Landers was rebuilt and reopened. In 1928, talkies came to the theater. This made Landers the 35th facility in the world to play talking motion pictures. The stage was still used, though, and in 1961, NBC TV began broadcasting the 5-Star Jubilee from the theater. Movies continued to run at Landers through to 1970.
In 1970, the Springfield Little Theater Organization bought Landers Theater. They began the effort to restore the theater to its 1909 grandeur. The 527 seats were restored along with the Baroque Renaissance Napoleon-style decoration. The building was placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1977. Springfield Little Theater stages around 9 productions a year. Other musical performances are staged here as well. Around 60,000 people watch the productions every year. But there are rumors that something other than just the living are watching the performances.
As is the case with so many old theaters around the world, Landers Theater is rumored to be haunted. Spotlights are suddenly unplugged. People feel a tap on their shoulder when there's no one there. Performers claim that during rehearsals and also during live performances, they see a shadowy apparition watching them from the upper balcony. The 1920 fire did more than just damage the theater. It took the life of the theater's janitor. Some believe that he is the shadowy figure seen in the balcony. The balcony also plays home to a residual haunting of a baby. Apparently, a worse mother's fear came true one night in the theater. A woman holding her baby on the balcony accidentally dropped the baby. This same visual of the baby falling from the balcony haunts the actors on stage at times.
Can you imagine that you're giving a performance and then all of a sudden you think you see a baby falling from the balcony?
No, that would be horrific. Performers also claim to hear the disembodied cries of a baby and occasionally the murmuring words of comfort from a female ghost.
The costume room is on the 4th floor and has a window. A male apparition has been seen in the window several times with long blonde hair. He apparently wears Elizabethan clothing, which makes us wonder if he's in costume. The interesting piece to these sightings is that this ghost has never been seen inside of the theater. He's only seen from the outside. A director claims that he saw a man standing in the building and he struck up a conversation. The man said nothing and walked towards a pillar and never crossed back into sight. He just disappeared. The director said the man had a beard and long hair and stood about 6 feet tall. Another spirit here is said to belong to a despondent stagehand who hanged himself from the rafters and remained there through 3 performances before anyone noticed him.
Oh, no.
Don't they have somebody up in the catwalks walking around every so often, at least between performances? It is believed that he now walks on those catwalks. He's probably walking around making sure nobody else is up there.
And then there is the green orb and the black void. These are just plain creepy. The green orb has been seen near the west stairs and near the balconies. It glows green and measures about 5 feet tall. The black void is just that, a darkness that envelops the area it is in, and has been seen in many parts of the theater. People can tell that it is present because they suddenly can't see through to something behind the void like a brick wall. There will be a black patch in front of the wall that appears to have no bricks.
Chuck Rogers, a stage designer and co-technical director for Springfield Little Theater, was at the Landers in 1999, working late one night when he saw someone standing in the lobby. He said, thinking it was someone who was able to get in through the front doors, he approached the man to ask him why he was there. He said, I thought it was someone who was able to get through the front doors, so I approached the man to ask why he was there. He just kind of stood there and stared at me. So I said, Sir, the building's closed. I need to ask you to leave. And he just stood there. So I started walking towards him. And as I walked towards him, he turned around and walked towards the auditorium, in which case I got a little angry that somebody was in there. So I followed him and I went right around the corner to confront him. And there was nobody there.
Beth Doman, Springfield's Little Theater's executive director, said of an angry female apparition that stomps through the lobby, she hangs out in the lobby, and it feels like she's kind of an angry kitty. Yeah.
Why does she go?
I don't know.
Try to scratch you? Great, Helen. That was a great impression of an angry kitty.
I don't know what happened to her, but she's not a happy camper. Because the energy changes pretty quick. And you can hear these high-heeled shoes walking, the clickety-clickety-clickety of high-heeled shoes. Which, that's enough to make anybody angry, wearing high-heeled shoes.
They don't make me angry.
Mort?
Have you been trying on Kelly's shoes again? All right, so let's talk about some of these other haunted locations in Springfield. First, we have Phelps Grove Park, and there's a ghost bride here. It's located at 950 East Bennett Street and is over 100 years old. The land was purchased before the Civil War, but the official park wasn't opened until 1914. The Springfield Zoo was located here for 10 years, and there'd been a formal rose garden and a lake. None of those things are here today, but there are bridges, a fieldstone pavilion, walking track, playground, wading pool, tennis courts, and a memorial garden. The spirit here is said to be a ghost bride. The legend says that newlyweds were killed in a car crash while driving through the park. Shortly after that, visitors to the park claim to see a bride in a white wedding gown and lacy veil standing by a bridge that leads to the park. Perhaps she's looking for her groom, whom has never appeared. I don't know if they were just driving through the park after their wedding or what. Next, we have the Walnut Street Inn.
The Walnut Street Inn Bed and Breakfast is located at 900 East Walnut Street and was originally built in 1894. It consists of 3 buildings: the main house, carriage house, and cottage inn. The main house was built for Charles and Catherine McCann. Charles arrived in Springfield with his first wife and their 2 children in 1879. He formed a wholesale grocery company he called Springfield Grocery Company that still serves the restaurant trade in 4 states today. Charles got involved with city civil affairs and helped to organize the original Chamber of Commerce, which was called the Springfield Club. Investments he made into a wagon company proved fruitful, and this company became one of the 4 largest in the nation. In 1891, he married Catherine Ashworth, although he had planned to not remarry when his first wife passed shortly after moving to Missouri. Charles wrote of building their home together. Good carpenters were paid only $2 a day. I bought lumber, the best, in carloads for $10 per 1,000 feet delivered, and other items in the same proportion. Yet this house cost me nearly $6,000. I put in the latest improvements except electricity, and this exception was quite a mistake.
I bet it was.
I had Henry Hornsby cast for me 20 iron Corinthian columns, which gave the house a very handsome appearance. And when finished, it was one of the best-looking homes in the street.
And now a little break for a word about one of our sponsors. W.A. Dennis bought the house in 1904, but he died before taking possession. His wife moved into the house and lived in it until 1917 when she sold to Harry S. Jewell. He and his wife Gertrude were owners of the Springfield News Leader newspaper, and Harry also was president of the Springfield Paper and Supply Company. The original home of the Grand Ole Opry was the Jefferson Theater in Springfield, and Jewell opened and built that theater. When his wife died, his granddaughter and her family moved in, and they split the house in two, with Charles living upstairs. He remained in the house until his death in 1945. Max and Barbara Rosen bought the house in 1953 and raised 5 children there. The house would open as a bed and breakfast for the first time in 1987 under Gary, Nancy, and Carol Brown. The south balconies were rebuilt and a metal spiral staircase was added. Carol was the 19-year-old daughter of the Browns, and she was the one to run the inn for the 9 years they owned it.
Wow,
I don't
impressive.
know. Were they like, here's a little pet project for you, honey? Go ahead and have at it? But wow, yeah, a teenager basically ran the thing in her early 20s. Pretty good. The Blankenship family bought the business in 1996. Gary Blankenship died in 2019, and the house was sold to Mary Fawcett and her 2 sons in 2021. Mary's granddaughter manages the inn, so they are the current owners of it.
We're not sure if the Cottage Inn is haunted, but the main house and carriage house reputedly are. A guest once saw a female specter sitting at a table against the wall in his room. This was the Rosen room. She was so real that the guest told her that this was his room, and she responded that it was her room. And then the woman disappeared.
I'd be like, okay, it's your room.
No, come back. I want to talk to you.
Can you answer some questions for me?
The Rosen room is said to be the most haunted. A Ouija board session contacted a spirit that claimed to be a guest of the inn who passed away in her 70s, but they got no name. Staff believes she's just watching over guests. A spirit sitting on the edge of beds has been seen by guests as well. We're not sure if this is the same ghost. There are cold drafts in the house as well.
Missouri State University's The Standard reported in 2000, in fall 1999, a couple was spending their anniversary in the McCann room, which is directly adjacent to the Rosen room. The man woke up early in the morning and began getting dressed in front of a full-length mirror located in the bathroom. The mirror is attached to a cabinet door, and the man had it swung slightly open. As he dressed, he was looking into the bedroom through the mirror and saw a woman standing in Victorian clothes with her hair up. The man quickly looked away from the mirror and into the bedroom, but saw no one. Then he looked back to the mirror, and the woman was there. When he looked into the room again and back to the mirror another time, she was gone. The man woke his wife and went downstairs to tell the owner. And then also they reported this one. A woman was staying alone in the Machino room, located above the garage in the inn's carriage house. She could not sleep that night and stayed up late reading. At about 2 a.m., she turned out the lights and laid down. Before she closed her eyes, she noticed a mist of fog near the skylight of the room. Trying to fall asleep and rationalize the mist, she closed her eyes. Then, as she recounted the happening to Knopf the next morning, she said she felt and heard someone pull back the covers and sit down behind her and to her left. She was rationalizing it as a dreaming in her head, but opened her eyes and looked back to see a woman sitting on her bed dressed in a Victorian dress with her hair up. The woman was looking at her, and she jumped up and screamed help. The woman vanished. The frightened woman turned on all the lights and the TV in the room and sat awake until the sun came up. The next morning, Knopf said the woman asked if anyone had ever seen ghosts in the inn and retold her story. So apparently Knopf was the person who was managing at the time or something. And then finally, we have Wilson's Creek National Battlefield.
Wilson's Creek National Battlefield is located at 6424 West Farm Road, 182. Wilson's Creek was the first major Civil War battle fought west of the Mississippi River. The first Union general killed in action happened at this battle. That general was Nathaniel Lyon, and he and his colonel attacked the Confederates who were encamped by Wilson Creek. Most of the battle took place on Bloody Hill, as the Confederates tried to break the Union lines. They failed with 3 attempts. However, Lyon was mortally wounded during the second attempt. Then, the Confederates finally got the upper hand, and after heavy casualties and ammunition running low, the Union decided to retreat, giving the Confederates the win. There were 1,317 Union and 1,222 Confederate casualties. John Ray's nearby farmhouse was used as a makeshift field hospital. Lyon's body was laid out on the family's best bed. The battlefield is haunted with cold spots being felt, The sounds of battle being heard and apparitions have been seen.
Kendra Jesse wrote on Reddit in 2020, "Let me spin you a tale of what it is I experienced at Wilson's Creek Battlefield in August of 2011. It started out as a girls' weekend. My mother, sister, and I decided we were going to have a girls' weekend before I had to go back to college later in August. With Mom and I both loving history and my sister willing to play along, we decided we'd go to Wilson's Creek Battlefield, which is near Republic, Missouri. It is one of the more famous Civil War battlefields in the state of Missouri and was only about a 2.5-hour drive from our home. After going to the battlefield, we were going to swing up to Kansas City for the night and enjoy Kansas City during the day, only another 2.5 to 3-hour drive. We weren't worried about time, we had plenty of it to spare and had no set schedule. When we arrived at Wilson's Creek Battlefield, we toured the small museum and obtained our tickets to go into the park to be able to drive the circle that has been set up. The battlefield is broken down into several stops, 8 to be exact. The first 2 stops were fairly uneventful. We found where the old mill site was and were able to look through the windows of the old large house that sits up on the hill. At the third stop, however, in order to get to what is known as Edward's Cabin, you have to walk roughly 3/4 of a mile down the hill and then another half-mile across the flat and over the creek. Mind you, this is in August in Missouri. It is hot, humid, and just plain out unpleasant, which I can attest to. My family lives in Missouri, and we've been back there during the summer, and it's like, ugh, it's worse than Florida.
Really?
Yes.
That's incredible.
Much more muggy. When you are making your way down the hill, you cross over a small bridge and then have the option of turning left, right, or going up a steep hillside. At this point, my mother and sister had given up. The sign originally said only 3/4 of a mile or so, and told me if I wanted to press on, they'd wait for me in the shade of the trees on the other side of the bridge. At this point, I'd made it that far and decided another half-mile was worth it to see what it was we'd come to see. So I continued on my way, crossing over the larger bridge and making it to the house. When you reach Edward's house, it is sitting in the middle of a field, and about 50 yards from the house is a large placard explaining that the house that sits on the site is not the original house that sat there, but is original to the time and was moved after the original house was destroyed. It also explains a bit of the history, how it was used, etc., etc. While reading this sign, I felt the ground give a little shake and looked up. As I looked up at the house began to shake more, and so did the ground. Except it wasn't a constant shake. It was the shake like you'd experience during heavy artillery fire or cannon fire. After only 10 or 15 seconds, though, it stopped. While thinking it was strange, I was still determined to see the house. The grass was tall enough that when walking straight up to the house, I didn't see the stairs on the right-hand side. So I walked around the house from the left-hand side. When I arrived at the back of the house, there was a door. Being the curious person I was, I went up the stairs to try to open it, but it wouldn't budge. Shrugging it off, I continued around the house until I found the stairs that I had previously missed and went up to the front door to find it opened easily. Inside, there was little to nothing, dust, an old fireplace, and an otherwise empty one-room building. My curiosity, however, got the better of me, and I went to open the back door, curious if it would open. Without a hitch, with little to no pressure, the door opened, no problem. Weird. After seeing the inside, I started back towards the car. By this time, it'd probably been 30 minutes or so since I last saw my mother and sister. My mother and sister had grown tired of being in the sweltering heat, even under the shade of the trees, and had gone back towards the car for the AC, though not uneventfully. When they decided they'd had enough of waiting, they started back up the hill. About 5 minutes into their walk back up the hill, my mother heard someone call out, "Mom!" She looked at my sister and asked if she heard it, which she responded she hadn't, so they kept up. Not even 20 steps further up, my mother once again heard, "Mom!" But this time, so did my sister. They stood still for a moment to try to determine where it was coming from, only to start up the hill again and to hear a third time someone yell, "Mom!" Now, you need to understand, we were the only ones there. There hadn't been anyone before us, and we hadn't seen anyone after us. The people in the visitor's place even welcomed us as their first guests of the day at a little before noon. My mom and sister just laughed it off and went to the car. When I finally arrived at the car, they were both laughing, and my mother looked at me and asked, "Aw, did you lose your mommy?" Only to fall dead silent when I asked her what the hell she was talking about. That I figured they'd grown tired of waiting for me in the heat and had moved back to the car when I wasn't back in 10 or so minutes. We continued to the different stops, viewing 2 of the battlefields and a battery. My mother had problems with the battery. When she crossed the bridge to look at the cannons, she became physically ill, but when recrossing it, the symptoms were gone. She'd cross again, only to get sick again. I quickly looked over the cannons and returned to my mom, sister, and car. We started back down the path to the 7th stop, Totten's Battery and Bloody Hill. While on the way towards Bloody Hill, things turned stranger. I'd brought along a camera that I'd been taking pictures with, and while we were driving towards Bloody Hill, my camera turned itself on. The only way I knew it turned on was that it was a digital camera that when you turned it on, the lens extended out. Thinking it was kind of strange for the camera to turn on by itself, I pointed it out the window and took a couple pictures. I'll post the strangest picture below in the comments, but let me just say, we definitely weren't alone. And I will say that I went to the link, and both of the pictures look like pareidolia to me. I mean, you're out in a field with grass and trees, and
yeah,
the one, maybe it could have been a person, but I just think it was pareidolia. When we got to Bloody Hill, both my sister and mother were done, so I went up to the placard by myself as they sat in the car. The placards explained that this was General Lyon's last stand, and at the bottom of the hill are 3 cannons, so I zoomed in and took the picture, and off we went. But again, we learned we weren't alone. I'll post that picture at the bottom as well. In all, it was an interesting time with lots of history to be learned and strangeness to be had for all.
Searching Series on Reddit shared some evidence they captured. At the beginning of the video, the narrator is walking towards the Ray house sharing history, and the Spirit Talker app said, "We are moving around." She later asks, "Who's here?" and "Are there any soldiers here?" And the app asks, "Where are the children?" The investigators asked if whoever asked the question had children, but there was no response. Something set their REM pod off on the porch of the Ray farmhouse. They asked if a spirit at the house moves things, and the spirit box said yes, and the REM pod went off again.
That one really got my attention because it's like you're getting a double response with 2 different pieces of equipment.
Right. They asked if there was a little girl there, and they got hides through the spirit box.
And then they went out into the field and did a bunch of questions with dowsing rods. And yeah, it seemed like they were talking to somebody. So some interesting activity going on there for sure. Landers Theater is one of the few original theaters still dotting the landscape of America. As seems to be the tradition of these grand old places, tales of unexplained activity are reported. Do the ghosts of former actors and workers continue to hang around the stage? Are the noises that are heard just the sounds of an old building settling? And how about these other locations in Springfield? Are they haunted? That is for you to decide. Well, let us know if you've been to any of these locations in Springfield and if you've had any weird experiences there as well. I want to thank you for joining us on this Redux. I've been your host, Diane.
And this has been Kelly.
You take care now.
Bye-bye. People feel a tap on their shoulder when there's no one there.
I just tapped Kelly on the shoulder
While I was
behind.
reading.
And then she grabbed my crazy for boys spot on my knee. I don't know. Do kids still call it that?
I
You
don't
get
know. I've
tickled
never
above your
even heard
knee?
it called that
Really?
when I was in school. I
Really?
think that's a Colorado thing.
I don't know. Anybody else? Did you guys grab each other's knees and tickle them above the kneecap? And if you get all
Squeeze.
wiggly, it meant you were boy crazy? I don't know why I would
Wasn't
come up.
accurate for you.
I was gonna say, I don't know why I came up as boy crazy, but okay.